This Let's Edit with Media Composer tutorial is brought to you by VideoGuys.com, the leading reseller of video editing and production equipment for more than 25 years. And by Boris FX, a leading developer of visual effect plugins, titling, video editing, and workflow tools for broadcast, post-production, and film professionals. Hey everyone, Kevin P. McAuliffe here, and I am back again with another Let's Edit with Avid Media Composer tutorial. And in this lesson, I want to start talking about bins. We're going to talk about bins over the next few lessons, but I think it's important to start out by simply talking about information in your bin. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to start out by talking about bin views and bin columns, because this is really where all of your main information is going to come from. The information you're going to find inside those bin columns, and you're going to get at that information with the different columns by setting up different bin views. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about those two specifically, but I'm going to get in and show you a few other bells and whistles when it comes to getting in and borrowing bin views from other editors to work with in your own user settings. Now, as always, before we get rolling, I always love to show off some of the footage from our footage partners, artgrid.io. And all of this footage that you see in this tutorial can be downloaded, plus thousands and thousands of other clips over at artgrid.io. And don't forget to use that link in the show notes so that you get 2 months off any of their yearly subscription packages. All right, so let's Command or Alt and Tab into Avid Media Composer. As you can see, I've already linked to some clips that we're going to be working with in this lesson. Of course, all of these clips come to us courtesy of our good friends over at artgrid.io. And once we've linked to them, we've gotten in and set our source settings, we could consolidate and transcode as necessary so that we are ready to edit with these clips in our timeline. Now, getting yourself organized and understanding how bins work inside of Media Composer is paramount to your workflow. If you know your bins well, meaning the ins and outs, sort of the hidden bells and whistles of all of the things that you can do inside your bins, you're just going to be able to get your work done that much faster. And in this lesson, of course, like I mentioned before, we're going to talk about our bin views and our bin columns. Now, you might think, well, that seems fairly self-explanatory, but it might be a little bit more in-depth than you think. So let's start out with this right away. As you can notice, the names of some of my clips are fairly long, and I have to stretch the composer window all the way over here to attempt to see the entire name. Now, this was added a little while ago. The way the bin columns now work is they will take on the width of the name or the parameter that is the longest. So for example, if I just came in here and I started removing some of this, you're going to notice that right away where this is really going to come into play is really with the first one, because let's just take this all the way back to camper van. Boom. All right. And when I bring this back, you'll see that now the column stretches over to this one, which is the next longest, etc., etc. So keep that in mind when you are naming your clips. All right. We used to have the flexibility of just getting in and dragging this window back and forth, but unfortunately now, like I said, it's going to take on the length of the longest named clip inside that particular column. Now, what I have done is I've gotten in and created a new user setting. Now, how do I know this, and how can I do this from within my project without having to step back to the project window? Command Shift or equals, Control Alt and equals to call up our settings. You'll see that I am in my user settings, and I created, as you can see, a very clever new username, brand new user. Now, the reason I did this is so that all of my bin views will be reset. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about our bin settings in this lesson because we did talk about them a little bit inside of lesson 3. Now, if I do come in here again, keep in mind, once you create new settings, you always want to get in and set these to be relatively quick saves, because, you know, as you get better and better inside of Media Composer, you will get a lot more work done in the span of a minute or 2 minutes than you ever have before. And you always want to make sure that everything is very easily saved and backed up so that you don't ever lose any of that important work along the way. All right. Now, for the most part, this right here is okay to leave everything by its default, at least for the time being. I'm just going to come down. I'm going to say okay. And these bin views here are represented not only in our settings, if I move the window out of the way, but right up here as well. If I click on our drop down, you'll see there we go, basic, capture, custom film format, media tool, and statistics. Now for me, you'll see that we have our start, our end, our duration, tracks, video, and comments. Now, for me, this is a little bit more than what I would use in what I have always called my clips view. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the fast menu. I'm going to drop it down and I'm going to navigate down to our choose columns category. Now, you're going to notice how choose columns and your bin views are going to come hand in hand with each other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say choose columns. Now, you'll see that we have an absolutely staggering amount of parameters in here that we can choose from. Now, comments and video are going to be out. Tracks, I don't even really care about. Start, I definitely care about. Let's just keep going up here. Duration, end, and color I don't necessarily need, and I think I'm pretty good with that. What I'm now going to do is simply say OK. So you'll see I've got the name, the start, the end, and the duration. Now I also want to point out the fact that once I did that, this bin view, because it is no longer the basic bin view, has actually been updated, and it's now called basic.1, but it's in italics. What that italics represents is the fact that that bin view has not been saved. So if I wanted to save it, all I'd have to do is click on the drop down, come down to save as. I'm not going to call it basic 1 because you're not going to want to have a whole bunch of views just called basic 1 or, you know, media tool.1 or whatever. I'm going to call this simply clips. All right. Now for me, I really only have a few standard bin views that I always go back and forth to. Now for me, with the default bin views, I normally never need them. Because again, like I said, I'll take the basic one and I'll start creating my own. So I want to draw your attention again to the settings window. And you'll take a look that once I created that new clips view, bin view, you'll notice that it has appeared over here as well. Now what's important to keep in mind is that if you realize, well, clips isn't really what I wanted to call this, I really wanted to call this something else, you don't need to come in and save a new bin view to do that. You can actually navigate right over here and call it Kevin's Clips if you wanted to. And once you update that, you'll see that when you drop it down, it's now disappeared from here and is now simply called Kevin's Clips. All right. So there's no need to keep, adding stuff, deleting it. So that way you can get in and create the one you want. You can simply jump right over here into the settings window and update it as you need it. Now, something else I want to draw your attention to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Control or Command and I'm going to select everything except our clips view like such. And I'm going to delete that. All right. So this way I only have access to that clips view. Now I really would like to get some views from another project. So how would we go about doing this? Or not another project, another user. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the location you're going to navigate to on the Mac on the screen right now. But on Windows, what we're going to do is I'm going to use the shortcut of Control and O. Now, we're probably familiar with Control and O if we wanted to open a bin. All right. However, if I navigate over here to our settings and I press Control and O, you'll now see that I'm going to open a setting or preference file. You'll see if I come back to the bin and hit Control O, it's to open a bin. So let's call those settings back up. I'm simply going to hit Control and O again to open a settings file. I'm going to drop that down and you'll see where I'm actually located right here. I'm in C, Users, Public, Public Documents, Avid Media Composer, and I want to go into the Avid Users, and I'm going to go into my Kevin P. McAuliffe. That is my system login. And in here, you can see all of the different users that are currently on the system, including that user that's me, brand new user. Now, the joke is that I'm on the beta testing program, and so I'm always constantly making new workspaces when new versions are released. So as a joke one time when my workspace was broken, I created one called Broken Workspace, which actually kind of worked pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on that workspace, and I'm going to come right down here to the Broken Workspaces settings. And if I double click on that, you're going to see that what I now actually have is almost an exact, not duplicate necessarily, but almost an exact mirror of the settings window that I have here in this brand new user, mirrored over here in the Broken Workspaces settings. So for example, If I wanted to get in and bring one of these bin views across, all I need to do is to simply grab it, and I'm going to use Control to grab another one, and I can simply drag them from that broken workspace's settings into the current user settings, and you'll now see those bin views appear right here, which means that I can now navigate up to the drop-down, and there they are right there. So I can actually, as I like to say, borrow bin views from other editors if I need to. If they've created some cool bin layouts, I can easily borrow them and use them in my project. So this way I don't have to worry about stepping into their project and accidentally messing up one of their user settings that they use all the time. Now again, for all my Mac friends, you can simply follow on the screen the directions to where you're going to find those settings, those user settings on the Mac, and you can then simply follow along, open the setting you want, and drag really any of the settings parameters from the workspace you opened into your current workspace. All right. Now, with that being said, I want to draw something else to your attention. This is actually something that's very cool, that's unique when you're going to bring in files like RED files, or possibly even files that you've made. Maybe they're dailies from another application like Scratch. Now, something that's important to keep in mind about Scratch is it's such a fantastic application. I love Scratch because it is a metadata machine. It just gives you no end of information about your clips. And what makes Scratch, bringing elements from Scratch, as well as bringing in elements like RED files, is that if I navigate to the source browser, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to come down to my Media 3 drive. I'm going to come down. I have some Komodo test footage here. I'm just going to select one of the clips. Doesn't matter which one. And I'm going to link to it. Now, once I do, it doesn't appear as though anything has really happened here. However, you'll see that as I drag over, I'm actually getting more information depending on the metadata that's available from these clips. Let's just come back here. Let's just pick a different one, see if I can get some more metadata. Let's just say link, and you'll see now a lot more metadata is coming over. Now, what makes this unique is that if I wanted to, I could navigate up and save a bin view with all of this extra metadata that's not available to me inside of my column view or my bin columns. So this way I can have all of this information accessible to me literally at the click of a mouse. So keep that in mind. Now, something else that I do want to draw your attention to, I'm just going to delete these two clips. All right. And let's just drag this window over just a little bit here. And I'm just going to switch back to my clips view. Very nice. All right. Now, what if, hypothetically, you wanted to get in and you wanted to add a column that didn't exist inside of your Choose Columns option? Well, you have the ability at any time to get in and create your own custom bin columns. So here's how you're going to go about doing this. All you need to do is to simply navigate up to the title bar here, right-click, and simply say Add Custom Column. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this time of day. That's always a common parameter that editors need to know about their footage. I'm just going to double click on the first clip. We're going to call this sunset. Okay. And on our next one here, this is definitely going to be at night. Now, this is not too bad when I'm dealing with, 7 clips here, 7, 8 clips. This one here is, inside. I'm just going to call this daytime. But what happens when you're dealing with, tens, hundreds, potentially even thousands of clips? And maybe you've gone in and you've entered the same 3 or 4 parameters: sunset, night, daytime, morning. Let's just put morning in here. And what you'd really like to do is to just speed this process up now when you're adding new information into each one of these clip names or clip times of day. What you can do is you can hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and simply click on that empty area, and you'll notice that a context menu appears now with the parameters that I've manually entered in this column. So for example, this is a lake by a mountain. I'd probably say this is, afternoon. We'll just call it daytime. This one here is going to be a woman by the ocean. We'll say that that's at sunset. And last but certainly not least, a woman walking a dog. We'll just call that morning. So you now see how you can quickly get in and not only add new bin columns, but you can start to populate it and then simply hold Option or Alt down on the keyboard and then click through to quickly add the parameter you need to add. So this way this task doesn't take forever. It's about speeding up the overall workflow, working smarter, not working harder. Now keep in mind, At any time, if you'd like to rearrange the bin columns, that's no problem. For me, normally, duration is always over on the far right-hand side. You can grab any one of those columns and simply move them over like such. In a lot of cases, I probably shouldn't be moving duration over beside time of day. I'm just going to move time of day right over here beside duration. It makes it a little bit easier when I'm moving the columns around. But you can now see that once I've done that, what I have the ability to do is to simply navigate up here. I'm going to save this bin view as clips with time of day. I'll call it TOD. And I'm going to say OK. And now this bin view is saved, so we can simply click back and forth, depending on what we're doing, to give us the information that we need simply at the click of a mouse. All right, now as I wrap up, in every lesson, I always show you some great footage from our footage partners at artgrid.io. And if you want to subscribe, don't forget to click on that link in the show notes, because that will give you 2 months off any of their yearly subscription packages. And don't forget, our good friends over at Video Guys are going to give you 5% off any of your purchases by simply using the coupon code of MC101. And I also want to give a big shout out to the team at Boris FX, makers of Continuum, Sapphire, and Mocha. And don't forget to use that coupon code of MC101 to get 10% off your next Continuum purchase. If you like this tutorial, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And don't forget, if you have any questions, you have any comments, or you have any tutorial requests, don't hesitate to send them to me at kevinpmcauliffe@gmail.com. This has been Kevin P. McAuliffe. Thanks a lot for watching.